welcome to our third event of the CKIC's Spring 2019 speaker series on how the humanities is an integral part of the 21st century workforce. These talks are hosted by the Center for Critical Inquiry and Cultural Studies, but we would like to acknowledge an enormous and incredible debt to the Gladys Gribble Delmas Foundation, whose grant has enabled us to bring you all the speakers for this semester. The Delmas Foundation promotes the advancement and perpetuation of humanistic inquiry and artistic creativity by encouraging excellence in scholarship and in the performing arts, and by supporting research libraries and other institutions which transmit our cultural heritage. So I would like to now introduce you to our speaker for the day, Ms. Jenifer Jensen, who has worked in corporate America for 20 years in roles of increasing responsibility. Her expertise ranges from training and development to system design and implementation. Ms. Jensen's pharmaceutical expertise is broad, spanning reimbursement, patient assistance, development, and manufacturing. She has an undergraduate degree in religion and applied ethics, a master's in applied ethics in the professions, both here from ASU, and is currently in the progress of earning a master's in liberal arts from Rutgers University. The ASU community is extremely proud of her, and I am honored that she's joining us today. Please welcome Ms. Jensen.
Hello. That's quite the introduction. Thank you. So Berta, when she asked me to do this, it was really under this idea that the humanities, right, getting a degree in the humanities is really somewhat useless, right? You've heard it. What are you going to do with a philosophy degree? How is that going to actually apply to real-world scenarios? So she went over kind of my background, so I thought I'd start there and talk to you a little bit about my professional experience. So I tend to favor really highly regulated environments, really controlled environments, pharmaceuticals, aerospace, distribution. I have a ton of knowledge in GXP and regulated quality management systems, controlled documentation, content management, training and development. As well, I've done a lot of corporate training work, a lot of education. And in recent years, maybe in the last 5 to 7, I moved more into business process design, development and implementation, as well as system design, and then organizational uptake and implementation of new systems, because that's often the hardest part about implementing and creating a new system, is actually getting people to use it and not be angry about it. You know, I'm sure when ASU rolls out some sort of massive system change, there's a fair amount of chaos, right? And rebellion. Yeah. So I've also done, in the last few years, risk management and mitigation. The FDA has been under increasing pressure in recent years to get drugs to market faster, right? The average span of time between the identification of a new molecule or compound and then the actual to-market rate is about 11 years. And anywhere between $1 and $8 billion, right? So this new methodology has kind of risen across the pharmaceutical industry in the last few years called risk management. So it's a way to identify what happens is when there's an issue with something, the pendulum swings all the way over here and everything becomes super conservative, right? I think you can probably chart some of that back to Vioxx. Does anyone remember Vioxx from Merck? It was used to treat arthritis, and it ended up giving people like massive heart attacks, right? So in recent years, there's been this push towards creating and building methodologies to help mitigate actual risk and identify factors that are really critical in the process so that you don't get bogged down in bureaucracy. And I've actually done a lot of that work as an independent consultant the last couple of years as well. And then just general quality improvement and continuous improvement work. So the thing is, so let's just all level set about what the humanities are. I pulled this from Stanford's website. It's the study of how people process and document the human experience, right? Philosophy, literature, religion, art, music, history, and language. The thing is I took the long long road. So I was actually already a senior manager working for Kessin, which is it's actually the largest wholesale distributor of pharmaceuticals in the world, before I got my degree. So I actually started working in corporate America and worked my way up and got promoted. And then when I hit a certain point, I thought, well, you know what, I have the extra cash, I'm gonna go get a degree. And I didn't want a business degree. I had enough of that in my everyday life. I didn't want to talk about organizations, I didn't want to talk about cash flow or revenue streams or any of that. I certainly did not want to study anything regulated in school. And so I came here to ASU and I enrolled in the Religion and Applied Ethics bachelor's program. And I went at it crazy, right? I think I ended up getting it in about 2 years. I loaded up with a whole bunch of generals from the community colleges, and I graduated in 2008. And then I enrolled in the Applied Ethics and the Professions program. And once again, I didn't want an MBA because I think actually a lot of what's wrong with corporate America is what is repeatedly institutionalized and taught through some of those thought schools. So then the question is interesting, and I think maybe I don't know that I can necessarily say the degree helped me because I was already successful before the degree. I think that what the degree did for me is give me an opportunity to reframe my experience, right? And create a different sense of meaning in the way that I lived my life and I operated within corporate America. It gave me a kind of I think maybe a different consciousness at times, and that I try to think about things differently. And you know, there's a couple of students here and back here in the back, and she's too young to understand, but I'll tell her this one day, that there's so much more to life, right, than work, business, and profit. Right? So, in terms of what the humanities can offer, I think, corporate America, let me pause there real quick. Does anyone have any questions? Or no?
We'll do questions at the end.
Okay, sounds good. I think that we create meaning, right? I'm not convinced, right? And any philosophers in the room might want to argue with me about it, but I'm not convinced that there's any essential to existence. I think it is what it is, and we make it what it is. But what we do a lot as humans is we supplement our fears, anxieties, and all those uncertainties we have about being alive and being uncertain about it into our professions, right? Into the people. And oh my gosh, you see it so much, especially in executives and folks who are really established and wealthy, and I think you would probably benefit from this therapy, you know. A little Jungian analysis would probably be a really good thing for you and everyone around you, right? So what happens then is we create and dwell in these patterns of dysfunction, and then we suffer, the people around us suffer, and organizations suffer. Because organizations, whether it's ASU, or it's a pharmaceutical company, or it's ExxonMobil, organizations are just people, right? They're just people, and people infuse organizations with their energy, and that energy is what you create with, right? And so if you've not had the opportunity to really ponder the meaning in your own life and arrive to a point of self-awareness, I argue that it's harder to create transcendent organizations that truly change the world, right? Or just the functions around you. So, from Freud to Jung to Fromm, Kierkegaard, I think they all ignite personal examination, right? And that capacity to see yourself from the outside only makes you a better executive, right? So actually, I have a funny story about that. I remember I had moved to New Jersey for a job, and I was in this meeting with vice presidents and executive directors, and at the time I was just an associate director. And we were having this conversation, and we were getting ready to make some really impactful big decisions about people's pay grades and their jobs and, you know, kind of where they sit in the career ladder. And as I was watching them all, I realized that all of them had this like mannerism where they would be like, let's think about that, right? And they all, like some of them would put their arms above their head. You know, my boss used to put her arms behind her back and her back. And as I was watching this, I picked up on the physical mannerism, but it was this really powerful moment because I realized that what they were doing was interrupting their automatic processing of information to give themselves an opportunity to consider it, to look long-term, to look long-range, right? And I think that that's actually, the roots of that are actually in these studies of people, of how people learn, of how people process information. And so I think that the humanities, what it can do is it helps you understand and frame these mechanisms and tools that executives use to avoid over-attachment, because that's what lets you take big risks, right? You can't be overly attached to things and take big risks. At a personal level, I think it helps you understand, it helped me understand, like my own issues with authority, right? And how that informed and influenced my career. And likewise, when you have direct reports or you have people working with you, the ability to humanize them, right? To understand them, to see them as whole people, is absolutely an essential component of humanities. So meaning and self-awareness, I think that's a big bucket. But I also think that the equalizers, the humanities are the great equalizer, right? So through the humanities, I'd argue that we see that people with power are really just people with power, right? They're not imbued with that power because of some divine being, right? It's not their entitlement. They use it well or they should lose it, right? In an ideal world, that's what should happen. So I remember when I was about 27, I was thinking about this yesterday when I was putting the slide deck together. I was in a meeting, I was a manager, I want to say it was the very first meeting I was ever in with like the directors, right? And so it seemed like, oh my gosh, these bosses, you know? And I was sitting at the table and I was listening to him and I was like, you don't know what the hell you're doing. Like you're just making this up as you go along. Like you're just making decisions. That's all you're doing, right? What you have on me is experience, right? Maybe some socioeconomic privilege, but I'll get caught up to you. You know, like, you know, maybe you have 5 to 10 years. That's literally all you've got on me. And I think that that in itself is really powerful because oftentimes, you know, when you think about a pure business curriculum, you tend to look at, you know, those very hard fixed organizational structures and hierarchies. But at the end of the day, the people in power in organizations are just the people who happen to be in power, right? And they don't really, they have experience and they have a certain degree of leverage, right? But it isn't for any other reason than that's where they happen to be and maybe they've proven themselves and they earned it, but they're just people. And so I think it's a great equalizer as well. And I think for anyone going in to work, to take that knowledge is power, right? They just have experience in a few years, they get caught up. And then, it's talking about power, I actually learned more about power reading Foucault than I ever learned in a business class, right? So I actually have an excerpt here that I'm going to read to you. And I remember when I read this, I understood the power dynamics of the organization I worked in so much better. It's a great quote. Any Foucault fans in here? No, you are. Okay. The third methodological precaution relates to the fact that power is not to be taken to be a phenomenon of one individual's consolidated and homogeneous domination over others, or that of one group or class over others. What, by contrast, should always be kept in mind is that power, if we do not take too distant a view of it, is not that which makes the difference between those who exclusively possess and retain it and those who do not have it and submit to it. Power must be analyzed as something which circulates, or rather, is something which only functions in the form of a chain. It is never localized here or there, never in anybody's hands, never appropriated as a commodity or a piece of wealth. Power is employed and exercised through a net-like organization. And not only do individuals circulate between its threads, they are always in the position of simultaneously undergoing and exercising this power. They are not only its inert or consenting target, they are always also the elements of its articulation. In other words, individuals are the vehicles of power, not its points of application. So what does that mean exactly? What that means is that when you're a part of an organization, I worked for a biotech company, about a 500 billion market cap, right? Maybe 12,000 employees at its top-ranked offices all over the globe. What that means is that while the CEO undeniably has leverage and power, right, as do the leaders in the organization, true power to move the organization lives inside the systems and processes that are developed, followed, and then sustained, right? So often people get into these positions and in these organizations and they feel powerless because they feel like they can't impact change. And it's because they're focusing on people, right? If you want to impact change inside of an organization, you focus on its systems and its processes because those grow invisible arms and nobody sees them. And those are also the things that will make an organization successful, more so than a figurehead or an executive leadership team, right? It's those systems and processes that create organizations that move things and that make things actually happen. And nobody ever talks to you about that in business class. So undeniably, I think all CEOs should be reading Foucault, right? So before I left the last full-time job I had, the organization was actually going through a huge change, right? They had new executive leadership in, and the new executive leadership was coming in, and they were reorganizing departments. And it was, I remember this feeling of just exceptional discomfort. Like nobody was quite sure what was happening. And what I think it helped to understand that because as these people were moving roles and the groups were being reorganized and shifted, that power was actually disrupted. So what happened is because if you don't manage that kind of big organizational change well, it does actually trickle down and it can impact productivity, right? Because that power is a net and it sits over the top of the organization. And you have to keep it stabilized even as you shift people inside that power. So that's power. The other thing I think that the humanities contributes, right, is diversity, equality, and challenging the status quo. And there was no way that I could give a talk about the humanities without talking about Virginia Woolf. Have you read A Room of One's Own? Yeah? Have you read A Room of One's Own? No?
They have joy on the horizon.
They do, absolutely. It's a must-read, I think, right? So I think I'd argue that I'm not sure that any of us would be here without thinkers like Virginia Woolf, right? We definitely stand on their shoulders. A Room of One's Own, it's a great quote, and I'll read it to you. You can read it, but I'll read it out loud. Moreover, in 100 years, I thought, this is Virginia Woolf, reaching my own doorstep, women will have ceased to be the protected sex. Logically, they will take part in all activities and exertions that were once denied them. The nursemaid will heave coal. The shopwoman will drive an engine. All assumptions founded on the facts observed when women were the protected sex will have disappeared. As, for example, here a squad of soldiers march down the street, that women and clergymen and gardeners live longer than other people. Remove that protection, expose them to the same exertions and activities, make them soldiers and sailors and engine drivers and dock laborers, and will not women die off so much younger, so much quicker than men, that one will say, I saw a woman today, as one used to say, I saw an airplane. Anything may happen when womanhood has ceased to be a protected occupation. And also, I mean, I have to say, in A Room of Its Own, when Virginia Woolf wrote Chloe liked Olivia, right? In those very same pages, she changed everything for someone like me, right? An openly gay, gender non-conforming woman who rose the ranks in corporate America. And I think that I can really thank Virginia Woolf for that. But there's so much more. I think there's so much more that the humanities can get us. You know, if you arrive to a point in your life where it feels intolerable because you can't balance security with your need for peace and joy, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, right? There's no guarantee that you will survive even past this very day. The moments of our life are not expendable, and the possible circumstances of your death are beyond imagination. If you do not achieve an undaunted, confident security now, what point is there in being alive? A living creature. So there's this component, and it was that quote at the very beginning, right? The humanities, that it's not just enough that you're, you know, a cog in the wheel, right? It's that, like Simone Weil said, that workers need to have their life feel like poetry. Right? Oh, thank you.